Have you ever felt totally surrounded, crying out for justice, but just feeling unheard? Well, we're going to take a journey through a really ancient prayer, Psalm 5, and see how a desperate cry for help can actually transform into this unshakable confidence. It's a journey that, you'll see, reveals a pretty profound message about justice, human nature, and ultimately, hope. This verse right here, man, it is the absolute emotional core of this whole psalm. This is not some polite, formal prayer. This is King David, a guy in some serious trouble, and he is pleading with God. Make your ways straight before me. He's begging, because his own path is completely blocked by enemies. This raw, personal plea is what kicks the whole thing off. All right, so this plea brings us right into our first major theme, a desperate cry for justice. And notice how specific David gets. I mean, these aren't just some vague bad guys. He paints this visceral, almost gruesome picture. Mouths with zero truth, hearts just full of destruction, throats like open graves, what an image, and tongues that are masters of deceit. You can feel the personal, real threat behind these words, and it completely justifies why he's pleading so intensely for God to step in. And this is the key part. David isn't just, wishing for help. He's coming from a place of confidence. His whole argument is built on the belief that God's very character, his righteousness, his holiness, means he has to act against evil. For David, it's not a question of if God will act, but when. But this is where the psalm takes a really fascinating and, let's be honest, an uncomfortable turn. What starts as this outcry against an enemy out there suddenly becomes a mirror pointed right back at the person praying. And here's the twist. Think back to that profile of the enemy, a mouth without truth, a heart bent on destruction. The source material we're looking at is pretty blunt. This description also perfectly fits King David himself at his lowest points. So this isn't just about his enemies anymore. And if it fits God's chosen king, the really uncomfortable question becomes, who doesn't it fit? And what this reveals is a core principle of divine justice, at least as it's presented here. God doesn't play favorites. He holds everyone to the exact same standard. I mean, the Bible is unflinchingly honest about how God punished David for his sin, which just goes to show that the rules apply to everyone, from the king on the throne to, well, us. So you see where this is going, right? It leads to this really stark, kind of unavoidable conclusion. If God's standard is perfect righteousness, and if we all fall short just like David did, then according to this worldview, we all deserve the exact same judgment David was calling down on his enemies. That's a pretty heavy thought, isn't it? I mean, if everyone is guilty, if we're all in the same boat, headed for judgment, then what? Where could you possibly find any hope? And that question, well, it leads us directly to the absolute heart of the Christian message. A solution so unexpected, so counterintuitive, you can really only call it a shocking reversal. This brings us to what some people call the Great Exchange. Look at this. On the left, you've got the judgment from verse 10 that we've just established we all deserve. Declare them guilty, let them fall, banish them. But then look at the right. This is the Christian claim of what Jesus endured. Our guilt, placed on him, crushed for our rebellion, separated from God in our place. It's a direct one-for-one swap. So to put it as simply as possible, the claim is that we were the ones who deserved the punishment, but Jesus stepped in and took our place. This radical idea of substitution is what, in this view, provides a verdict of not guilty for anyone who trusts in it. Okay, so if the problem of universal guilt is solved through this incredible reversal, what's the result? Well, it's not just relief. It's something much, much deeper. It's the very foundation of joy. You see, the joy that David talks about in verse 11, it's not just a fleeting, I'm happy today because things are going well feeling. It's a profound, unshakable security. It's the kind of joy that comes from knowing that the righteous judge of the universe hasn't just ignored evil, but has dealt with it completely and decisively through Christ. And that is a joy that can withstand any storm. This security is captured perfectly in David's powerful metaphor of a shield. And from a New Testament perspective, that shield is Jesus Christ. His righteousness literally covers believers, protecting them from the judgment they deserved and wrapping them in a favor they could never, ever earn on their own. Okay, but this brings up a really tough and honestly a very fair question. If believers are protected by this shield, why do they still suffer so much? This leads us to this crucial concept of a faith that has to operate beyond what we can see. And this is where we have to understand a key distinction. Faith, in this view, isn't transactional. It's not like a vending machine, right? You don't just put in faith and get out an easy, trouble-free life. Instead, it's foundational. It's a deep, deep trust in God's character and his promises, especially when your immediate circumstances are painful and confusing. I mean, just think about the early Christian martyrs for a second. They're the ultimate case study here. We would look at their brutal deaths and ask, where was the divine rescue? But their unwavering faith had an unspoken answer. Our rescue isn't from physical death, it's from eternal death. Where was their future? It's secured in a reality beyond a grave. You see, their faith was anchored in something way bigger than the Roman Colosseum. You know, the source material uses this really powerful modern analogy to drive the point home. On one hand, you have the good news of a great corporate earnings call. What's that about? Your portfolio, your retirement, your temporary wealth. It affects your temporary happiness. But then you have the gospel of Jesus Christ. And what does that concern? Your soul, eternal life, your ultimate purpose. It's not about your temporary happiness. It's about your eternal destiny. The scale of importance is just, there's no comparison. So how do you actually build a faith like that? Well, the source suggests these practical steps. First, you judge your circumstances through the lens of God's promises, not the other way around. Second, you let those promises become the very foundation for how you think and how you feel. And third, you consciously decide to put your trust in the eternal promises, not in your temporary feelings or what's happening right now. And when you start to think this way, it completely flips the script on what a successful life even is. It's got nothing to do with accumulating wealth or fame. In this view, real success is having the very life of Christ, his undying love and resurrection power living inside you, a power so profound it guides and protects you even through death itself. And that brings us to this final thought that really just encapsulates the entire journey of Psalm 5. It begins with a cry from the dark, but it ends with this unshakable conviction. It's a message of enduring hope that says no matter what darkness you're in right now, trust in a greater reality can see you through. And that leaves us with a question to chew on. When you find yourself in the dark, what's the foundation of your confidence?